You walk into an eye clinic with a straightforward complaint, a pounding headache that starts every time you sit down at a computer. You read the smallest letters on the eye chart with ease, and the doctor confirms your vision is a perfect 20/20. The results suggest your eyes are fine, yet the pain persists. This is the exact clinical profile of patient. She's 26 years old and works as a pet store manager. Her vision tests at a flawless 20/20 in both eyes, but 4 hours into a shift, she develops a sharp, exhausting pain, localized entirely to the top of her head. A standard physical exam reveals no underlying disease, no inflammation, and no obvious need for corrective lenses. From a traditional diagnostic perspective, there is no clear reason for the symptoms to exist. The answer lies in a condition called latent hyperopia. It is a form of hidden farsightedness, where the eye's natural anatomy is flawed, but the body is actively masking the defect. Clear vision does not always indicate a healthy optical system. In many cases, a 20/20 test result is actually the byproduct of a high-stress compensation loop that the eye is using to stay in focus. This diagram shows light in a standard eye. Parallel rays enter the front, converge, and intersect precisely on the retina, creating a sharp image. In a far-sighted eye, the eyeball is physically short. Incoming rays don't finish converging, so their focal point ends up behind the retina. Because the light hasn't fully focused by the time it hits the back of the eye, the image hitting the retina is scattered and blurry. Since this structural flaw naturally produces a blurry image, the patient's ability to see 20/20 means there must be an internal mechanism actively dragging that focus forward onto the retina. That mechanism is a process called accommodation, the eye's way of manually adjusting its focal length. This process relies on the ciliary body, a textured ring of muscle that is located just behind the iris. It connects to a clear, flexible crystalline lens via thousands of microscopic, string-like fibers called zonules. To change focus, the ciliary muscle contracts and moves inward. This slacks the tension on the zonule fibers, allowing the flexible lens to expand into a fatter oval shape. This thicker lens bends light at a steeper angle, pulling the focal point forward directly onto the retinal wall. Effectively, the eye acts like an auto camera, using internal muscle power to change its lens shape and compensate for the eyeball being too short. In a typical eye, this muscle only works when you look at something close up. When you look at the horizon, the ciliary muscle goes limp and relaxes completely. With latent hyperopia, the muscle never reaches that state of rest. Because the eye is structurally short, the muscle is stuck at a permanent baseline level of tension just to see clearly at a distance. This creates two types of farsightedness. Manifest hyperopia is the error the eye cannot overcome, which shows up on a standard test. Latent hyperopia is the hidden portion, kept out of sight by this constant involuntary muscle contraction. This means the ciliary muscle is performing a marathon without a finish line. It remains contracted every hour the patient is awake, 7 days a week, with no opportunity to recover. For our patient at the pet store, 4 hours of desk work forces these muscles through the equivalent of a heavy weightlifting session. The result is the radiating head pain and exhaustion that brought her to the clinic in the first place. Detecting this is a significant clinical challenge. A patient can't simply choose to relax a muscle that has been involuntarily flexing for their entire life, so standard eye exams often miss the underlying error. To bypass the patient's internal autofocus, doctors must use a procedure called a cycloplegic refraction. The doctor applies specialized eye drops, like tropicamide, which temporarily paralyze the ciliary muscle. This effectively turns off the eye's ability to flex or accommodate. With the muscle finally forced into a resting state, the doctor can measure the total hyperopia. This is the sum of the manifest error they could see before and the latent error that was previously hidden by the muscle's flex. Identifying this hidden baseline is the only way to prescribe the correct glasses. Once the glasses provide the necessary optical power, the ciliary muscle can finally stop working, and the chronic headaches stop. While a young person might be able to push through this strain for years, the biological clock eventually changes the stakes as they move into their 40s. Over time, the internal crystalline lens naturally stiffens. It loses the soft, pliable quality that allowed it to change shape so easily in youth. The ciliary muscle, already exhausted from years of constant tension, eventually finds it impossible to bend this hardened lens. This leads to presbyopia. The latent farsightedness is suddenly unmasked as the eye loses its ability to compensate, causing vision to deteriorate rapidly for both reading and distance. Recurring eye strain in someone with 20/20 vision is a biological warning sign. It signals a hidden structural flaw that, while currently masked by the body, will eventually exceed the physical limits of the eye.